I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on October 17th, 2014. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room that is available, and many of you have logged into that already, and that is great. One of the advantages to joining us live. It's right below the main video window, and you can listen to the recorded version of this recorded a little bit later. Either way, if you have questions about strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, send us an email. Contact us at coaching@gallup.com, or you can use the contact page over there at coaching.gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, gallupstrengthscenter.com, for all your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video and both streaming and now downloadable audio. And at the end of the program, I have some new links for you guys where you can get your RSS feeds now through iTunes and through podcatchers on Android. So hang tight. Those will be coming here at the end. Those are available for you. All the past shows as well, coaching.gallup.com. Jeremy Petrosini is our host today. Jeremy works as an advanced learning and development consultant here with me on the riverfront. Jeremy, great to see you again, and welcome to another Call to Coach.
You too, Jim. Good to be here, and excited to be back online. So, we again, any of you who have been joining us in the past, we've now been doing these broadcasts for over a year, and it's really fun, exciting to hear the differences in stories, but yet similarities of what's happening around the world. We've got a guest with us today, Dr. Tim Peterson, who is a professor of management and associate dean of the college of business at North Dakota State University. Tim, that was harder to say for some reason, but
well, I don't know why it's hard to say.
One of the things with Tim, and you'll get to hear part of Dr. Peterson's story here, but he also serves as the co-director of the Legacy Program, which is the premier leadership program in the college. And one of the things that Tim's passionate about is both his own passion with strengths, the way he's been able to utilize that with students, but also with business leaders in the community. And then many of you are now familiar as well with Gallup's latest assessment that we just launched a book behind, the Entrepreneurial Strength Finder. And Dr. Peterson has really been one of kind of the front runners with that. It was about a year ago, I think, Tim, that you were in Omaha for your training. And we talked a little bit about entrepreneurship. You were able to connect with some of our leaders in that division, and it's been fun to have you kind of testing it out in the front lines out of the gates. So, welcome.
Well, it's been exciting to do. So, yeah, it was September of last year that you were my instructor for Enterprise, and I mentioned that we were looking at entrepreneurship here at North Dakota State, and you said, "Hey, I need to connect you with Todd Johnson," and you did. Todd got all excited about what I had in mind. January, the instrument came out. 1 week later, I had 4 of my students take it. Within 2 months, we had 60 high school students taking it, and we were giving them feedback on their entrepreneurial strengths. So yeah, we're up and rolling. And now we're working with 2 high schools that we're going to be doing a thing called Business in a Box, which actually comes from one of your partners, Hope. And so we're getting ready to launch that. They're forming their teams around ESF. Yeah, we're well engaged here.
Yeah, very, very exciting. And I know, again, and we'll make sure we do like we always do, where we open up the chat. So anybody listening, if you've been playing around with the Entrepreneurial Strength Finder or you have other questions on it, again, I'm excited for Tim to be able to answer some of those. Real quick, Tim, let me share your top 5, which makes sense for, again, me saying you should connect with Todd Johnson, and I think it was less than 24 hours after that, me saying that, right, that you made that happen. So activator, focus, futuristic, learner, and command, right? Not afraid to take charge, make stuff happen, and hone in on it, which I love, and watching those themes come together. Tim, you know this, but for listeners out there too, it's part of Gallup's really hope and passion that in wanting to really unleash not just a strengths movement, but where people really have a deepened sense of identity and purpose in their own lives, we believe that individuals discovering their strengths really helps them to do that. And so it's one of our goals is to see 1 billion people around the world discovering their strengths, and we know we can't do that without coaches like yourself. And so it's part of our mission to equip and partner with 1 million coaches to help do that. One of the things you said is not only have you shared this with students, but it was a few months after you came through the course that one of your past students was in the training, came up front and said, "I'm here because Dr. Peterson has changed my life." You know, were Jennifer's words. So, tell us a little bit about your journey. So, obviously, you've been teaching for a while. You're passionate about leadership, investing in current leaders, future leaders. Tell us a little bit about your strengths journey and how you really felt personally called to coach.
Well, let me start by saying that this all started back in 1999. So it's been a while that I've been doing this. And that was driven by really the first book that came out that hinted about talent, and that's First Break All the Rules. I actually picked it up in January, started to read it, and walked into my class and told my class to return their textbook. We weren't going to use the textbook anymore. We were going to work out of this book. And they were a little puzzled by that. That was, but, you know, I was convinced that what I saw there was right, and I really needed to get my students prepared for, 1, you hire for talent, 2, you give them the outcomes, 3, you align them with those outcomes based on their talents. It was very different, but it was really important, and followed up by Now Discover Your Strengths. As soon as that book came out, I took it. The top 5 have been the same top 5. I've now taken it through Now Discover My Strengths. I took StrengthsFinder. I've taken Strengths Quest because I do a lot of work with students. And by the way, those are the top 5. I don't think those are going to change because I've gotten the same results every time that I've done it.
Yeah, you validated that Don Clifton quote, right? If people don't change that much, right? So don't waste time trying to put in what was left out, but pull out what was left in. Yeah. So.
Yeah. You're not going to get rid of futuristic or command. So they're just going to be there.
Yeah.
And so then in 2001, I actually started working with MBA students, actually using StrengthsFinder at that time. We really, actually, I think at that time it was still Now Discover Your Strengths, but we actually started using it and talking about why is this so important? Because I really am a big believer of the positive psychology issues that says that what's really important is maximize your natural talent rather than spending all your time on weaknesses. I mean, I really support that. So I think that's also what attracted me specifically to strengths, because that's the approach. So I started doing that at Oklahoma State, and Jennifer was one of those students. So, and I happen to know she's listening in, so this is a shout out to her. And then I went back to Texas A&M, and Gallup had now started to create some professional training that was available.
Yep.
You know, when I was doing it first, you're just kind of out there on your own using the book the best you can. So I actually went strengths educator in 2005, was certified based on what we knew then. You know, if you're listening and you're an educator today, there's a whole list of courses that you would take, either based on if you want to be an instructor or you want to be a facilitator. So Gallup has continued to advance this, and that's one of the things I love because I always get to learn something new. Sounds like a learner, right?
Yeah.
And my wife went through Strengths Educator at the same time in 2005. And that's when I got my 34. I've looked at it twice. I don't look at the bottom stuff. I don't focus on that. Then I went through the Strengths Enterprise Coaching Program with you. You were my instructor in 2013, and I was part of the inaugural class for Entrepreneurial StrengthsFinder, which just happened last month.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So that's kind of my story. Those are the things that I've done. I'm getting ready here. I've got a group of about 50 educators that are really excited about what we're doing. Right now, all incoming freshmen in the business school take Gallup Strengths through Strengths Quest. And so other professors have seen that. And so now they're interested. In fact, I was on the phone this morning with the Strengths Education Division talking about how we're going to deliver that professional training to those people. So that kind of gives you an idea of my path.
Yeah, no, it's great. Again, kind of even the groundwork, like you said, of making first break all the rules, the recommended text, for a course that you led,
Yeah.
kind of really does open up the gates to say there's a different way to think about leadership and management.
Right.
So, I'd love to hear, and let's maybe divide it for our listeners and just your own experiences too, with both some examples around how you've been able to use Strength Finder, but then also the entrepreneurial Strength Finder.
Yeah.
It's always fun to just kind of hear those impact stories. So again, you've now been using this. You talked about even your wife taking it, students that have taken it. I know again in our conversations, there's business leaders that have come to you and said, Tim, how do I leverage this with my business locally or with what we're trying to do? Share maybe one or two stories, both on the Clifton Strength Finder side and also on the entrepreneurial Strength Finder side,
Yeah.
of ways you've seen lives change or impacted because of the advice you've been able to offer alongside of those tools.
So let's start on the StrengthsFinder side,
Yep.
because that's been around longer. I tend to coach people, and people that come to me, usually they have a crisis in their life. I've really come to realize that those are the people that I'm probably the best coach for.
Yep.
And I'm best because of my natural talents. And I think that's one of the things that you said in class, and I really took away, and I think we need to keep reminding coaches that we probably can't coach everybody. I coach people that have some significant emotional event that occurs in their life, and they show up at my door to say, can you help me?
Fix me.
Yeah. And what they really want is me to listen, think about what the future might look like for them, and actually use my command and activator to say, here's what you need to do. And I just had that happen. Young woman, they just reorganized her organization. She was not in a senior leadership role, but she is now because of how the reorganization happened. And just so happened that the CEO and president put her office right next to his. And all of the other senior people started to say, oh, that means she is the heir apparent to becoming the next president's CEO. Okay. All of a sudden, all of her natural talents weren't working anymore. And so she came to see me and said, I don't know what to do. And I said, so let's look at your talents. Let's really talk about what those are. And one of the things is, we agreed that she would go back and just say, I have no desires to be the next CEO or president. This is what I want to do. This is what fills my life. And she said, once she did that, everything settled down. But for a while there, she couldn't work with the people she had worked with so well before. So that's, a great example of a person who all of a sudden things weren't working. They fell into the basement. And by communicating clearly how she wants to use her natural talent, she found herself back in the kind of position she wanted to be in. So that's a great example. I do have companies that come regularly to ask, can I do something? And at one point, we all know that we didn't have enterprise. And so I may have been out on the cutting edge even when I wasn't supposed to be, but I was there because, they show up, knock on my door. I have my own consulting firm that I've had for years, and so I would help. There's a bank here locally that we have trained the top 69 executives at that bank. And when I say we, you mentioned legacy. I actually help my students and I develop them to the point where they can help do the training. I'm always there, so that's why they have somebody that's, certified, or certifiable, whatever the appropriate one is. But they have somebody there. But I actually have the students engaged in helping do the professional training. And we started with 16 people at that bank, and the next thing I knew, they wanted us to do all the branch managers, so we've done that. It's just great. Now, they have 2 people inside that bank that have gone and gotten certified. So now they have basically taken over their own work, which, that's exactly what I want.
Yep.
Thrilled that they're off doing that on their own. Now they only come to me when they say, what do we do here? And we might dig into the coaching kit and say, well, you could use this exercise. And that works better for me because I am an educator. So my first thought is always, how does the learning happen?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why they come to me.
I've heard that a lot too, Tim, and just that story you're sharing with the local businesses of, there's an element, especially when you've got your full-time job as a professor and then consulting business on the side. For some people who are, full-time consultants, independent coaches, there's a little bit of fear of, if the company gets their own coaches, is that erode my business? But I actually think what you just said is kind of coaching the coaches. And Gallup has those same relationships with our clients, where we're saying, a Wells Fargo bank, over 200,000 employees, we're saying we want as many internal coaches, advocates,
right,
as you can have, and then we can come alongside you as your resources, your advisors, to help drive that forward. So again, I think the same thing you're saying. There's a legacy, there's a big picture impact piece, whether you're equipping some of your students who are helping you do it or equipping people within the organizations. I think that's really where we see long-term impact begin to happen. So
yeah, and I think one of the things that happens around that is those people at that company talk to other companies at mixers and stuff, and they start talking about strengths, and then they'll say, well, how did you get involved with that? Well, guess what? My name comes up. And then somebody comes and says, can you come help our company like that? So actually, I think I get more business than less.
Yeah.
Because then people come and knock on the door.
Yeah.
One of the stories, it's slightly unrelated, but on the education side, one of the things I get all the time is I get a call from a parent, and I pick up the phone, and it kind of goes like this. Hi, are you that Dr. Peterson that does this stuff with strengths? And I'll say, yes. And they'll say, well, you help so-and-so son or daughter. Could you help my son or daughter? I mean, I don't get paid for that because that is my calling in life.
Yep.
But do I feel fulfilled because of it? You better believe I'm fulfilled. And I think that also works on the profit side. That you do a really good job and then they want to get trained on their own, fine. Because there'll be another company that's going to come seek you out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least, I mean, that's been my experience all along.
Talk a little bit too with the entrepreneurial strength finder. So again, I know, and again, some people out there might be new to this. This is where if you're unfamiliar with it, throw some of those questions out in the chat and we'll address them. At a real high level, Tim, I'll kind of share this and then you can unpack it more for people. Because as you mentioned, you've been a fan of this for the last year. You had some students right away take it a year ago. We've continued to evolve the instrument, the tools. Just launched, as you said, just 2 weeks ago, our very first 2-day training course for coaches, which you had the chance to go through. I haven't yet had the chance to sit through on it. I know I was in town that week, but teaching a high performance manager course in the room next door to you. But at a very high level, what we know about this instrument, why it's so phenomenal, is it doesn't replace the Clifton Strength Finder. The Clifton Strength Finder, again, really lets people know how they can do a specific task. So if you and I are both leaders or presenters, we both share futuristic, but your activator focus is going to be different than my maximizer strategic.
Right.
But we both can deliver the task, but how we do it, our Strength Finder gives us a lens on that. The Entrepreneurial Strength Finder was built on the heels of studying successful entrepreneurs. So we found, and Tim, you know this, but sharing kind of with the broader audience, we found that there's 10 common really talent traits to successful entrepreneurs. And so this assessment lets you measure for yourself or others in your community that you're working with who may have entrepreneurial talent. I know you're doing a lot, Tim, with students as well, which I think that's a phenomenal way, both in our country and around the world, for people to identify entrepreneurial talent of middle school, high school students. We could now invest in them, connect them with mentors, connect them with local banks to begin to think about future jobs that they'll help create for the community. But this assessment really does answer, can you do it? Not just how, but can you do it? Do you have either within yourself, or if you don't, if I'm not a good delegator, am I really smart at partnering with somebody out of the gates to find someone who's a delegator? So that assessment really helps give us a lens into an individual or a group of individuals to say, do they have entrepreneurial talent? And if so, how do we coach them, develop them, mentor them? So share with us a little bit from your understanding, again, why it was so exciting for you to leverage this tool as well as the Clifton Strength Finder, and maybe, again, just an example of how you begun to see the impact of it.
Well, I think the first thing we have to think about, and I'm going to pitch a Gallup book, and I just want all the coaches to know I get no kickbacks for what I'm doing. Just do it because it's the right thing. I think what really drove it for me, and I will tell you that I probably as an educator wasn't really interested in entrepreneurship. That's not my area. My area is leadership, management, organizational behavior, and entrepreneurship is somebody else's area in my mind. So I didn't start out being the champion for entrepreneurship.
Okay.
But I picked up Jim Clifton's book.
Yeah, The Coming Jobs War.
The Coming Jobs War. And I read that, and I will tell you, it's a very sobering book. It's not one that you read and at the end there's initial joy. Because, well, I mean, some of the statistics are pretty serious.
Yeah.
When you read that we have roughly 400,000 startups and we need 1 million to have the kinds of jobs that we need to get the economy back where we want it, and we are losing 470,000 jobs, or not jobs but companies every year.
Yep.
That's a sobering fact. And I look at history. We heard the exact same message that's being shared today right after World War II, that the way it looked, that the Japanese economy was going to take over ours. And then we had all the things that happened in Silicon Valley, and that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're hearing that again. And you can't have a strong military force if you don't have a strong economy. And I would prefer that we compete on an economy level rather than having to compete over war. Yep. And that's said by somebody who spent 25 years of their life in the military. I don't want us to be in a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that, and I all of a sudden said, "Oh my gosh, we got to do something." And I'm actually in the right position to do it. I'm a professor in a business school.
Yep.
I'm the associate dean in a business school. We better do something. So all of a sudden, I really got the passion that this is something we had to do. And when I heard that there was a new instrument available that would focus specifically on a vocation that you might choose to have, I needed to know about it. So yeah, I was there. I immediately wanted to talk to Todd Johnson and learn about it. It came out on January 17th. On the 18th, I had my results. And I'm not surprised by my results. I'm going to just pick out a couple things. One of my dominant areas is determined. You shouldn't be surprised. I've got activator. I've got command. I can see how those that are really central to who I am make me be determined, and I will push through.
Yep.
Okay? And I said, this is something we've really got to do something with. And so I actually was already working with a bank in town to work with their junior bank board. So I went to the bank and I said, there's this new product available. Would you be willing to fund this for your 60 bank board members? And let me tell you, once I described it, the bank said absolutely, because they already see the linkage. And by the way, we're working with that bank about an issue when somebody comes in and says, I want a loan. One of the things we're talking about is, do you ask the people that are part of that company to take ESF?
Mm-hmm.
And do you look at that ESF around where do you have dominance? And do you have people that are dominant in all the areas? And if you don't, who do you need to add to your team I actually think that's one of the big powers, is that how do you add people to that new startup so that we have all of these natural talents and learn to appreciate each other. You know, all 10, I don't have all 10 dominant. I happen to know, and I knew it before I even took it. Delegating says supportive. I need people around me to remind me to delegate stuff out. Because if I don't, I try to do all the work. And by the way, I see that in entrepreneurs all the time. They start up a company, and early on you can do all the work. But if you want it to thrive, stay in existence, you don't want it to be just one person, you eventually have to delegate some of that work out to other people. That makes entrepreneurs absolutely nuts because I'm going to give it to somebody else to do. They won't do it like I do it. And I need that reminder. So that's a great example. We've had these junior bank board people do it. The bank is excited about it. They were then excited. We gave the pitch yesterday to the senior executives at the bank, and they are paying for the business in a box. They're going to provide seed money. So that's a great example, I think. But I also have a student, I always love telling this one, because he took the instrument as a freshman.
Okay.
We have a class that's a one-credit class. It's really to figure out, do you have any of the things that would kind of work to be an entrepreneur? And he took it just last year as a freshman. And he got one of the front pages that says, congratulations. And he came in to see me. Said, is this just a gimmick? Everybody gets this page, right? It says congratulations. Now, I already knew that wasn't a gimmick because I'd already talked to Todd about it. I said, no, it's not a gimmick. You actually have enough dominant talents, specifically in entrepreneurship, that you could probably move in that direction. Oh, by the way, I should say, the instrument doesn't say you couldn't be an entrepreneur if you only have one or two. In fact, when I was in training, one of the people that was there with me, the person he coached, felt very bad that she only had one dominant area. But as he talked to her, he quickly pointed out, that's how you've built your business. And she is the one I don't have, delegation. And then she went, oh my gosh, that is how I built my business. So you could have one if you know how to use it, and you know how to put people around you with the others. But he has enough that Gallup says you are probably part of the 5%. And I told him that, and then he went away, and I thought, okay, that's the end of that. Next week, he's back on my calendar, and he wants to talk about ESF again, and I'm like, come on, I already talked to you.
Already had this conversation.
Yeah, I've already had this conversation. You know, you got a free coaching hour. You need another hour. And he comes in and he said, I've got to tell you this. I have a friend who's in engineering. He also is a freshman here. And he said, I went to him and said, remember that idea that we kicked around back when we were in high school? I actually have some natural talent. We could be able to start a business. They actually are working on the idea right now. We have kind of an event here. We call it Innovation Week, where students can pitch an idea and they can get some seed money. They're working on it. And I told them, you might pitch it this year, because they're sophomores now, and maybe it won't win any money, but you're going to get feedback that's going to help you go back, work on it more. I have a young man that I wish I could have given the instrument to, but it wasn't available. He actually had an idea for what he called a swim club. Originally, it was a profit-making venture. He's turned it into a not-for-profit, and he was just, and if he's listening, I hope he's proud, because we're proud of him. He went out and made it a not-for-profit and just went to Nepal and trained 2,000 students on how not to drown. If I'd have had that instrument, I could have helped him more. But I didn't have it then. And I haven't had the chance. I now actually, thanks to Todd, I've got a couple extra books that he sent me. by the way, he's getting one of those books because I want him to know what he's naturally good at.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all examples, and we're working on another project. We're actually working on a proposal to actually get back into the high schools and give the instrument to juniors in high school. So that's where we are, and I think you can tell we're racing down the road because I think we've got something great here.
Yeah, the thing with that story too, Tim, and I know you've read this in the Entrepreneurial Strength Finder book, that was co-written both by Jim Clifton, so he obviously builds it almost as an addition to what you initially read in the Coming Jobs War. This is the way to do it. Leverage this tool. Find those entrepreneurs. If you can find them as juniors in high school, how much better. But the definition that both Jim and then Sangeeta Bottle is the other researcher who co-wrote this with Jim. One of the ways that we describe an entrepreneur is not someone who turns an idea into a product, but it's somebody that turns an idea into a customer.
Yep.
And I think exactly what you're saying. There's a lot of people who invent stuff and manufacture it or write books, and they've got a garage full of whatever it is, but they're not entrepreneurs. You can even call them inventors maybe, or with a lot of ideation. But when you can turn that into a customer, when you're helping teach people how not to drown, or you're helping turn these into actual for-profit businesses. Even a lot of nonprofits today are people with a lot of big mission. Instead of saying, let's just break even, if you actually run that business like a business, you can create more jobs, you get more impact, but you can still impact the city and the people you want to impact as well. I mean, it's that social entrepreneurship is oftentimes what it's referred to. But love what you're doing. I know you just mentioned the proposal that you have in place to give, reach juniors in high school who not only can identify if they have the talent, but I know you mentioned to me the other day as well that those that do have talent, let's say it's 60 or so students, they would then be eligible to receive credited hours, college credits, to really focus and mentor them to really become their best and really maybe unleash that entrepreneurial talent. So it's really cool to hear so much of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's the direction we're going, is that then they will get a chance to earn up to 3 credits while they're still in high school. And by the way, I'm not trying to get them to take 3 credits. They will be at North Dakota State. I'm not trying to get them to do 3 credits so they'll come here. Although I know I will get some of those students.
Yep.
And I'm also not trying to get them to come and be business students. One of the biggest problems with entrepreneurship is I often hear, well, what you need is a major in entrepreneurship. Well, if you have a major in entrepreneurship, you basically take people out of their discipline.
Yep.
Where people are making breakthroughs. Really what I want them to do is have enough entrepreneurship that they could take the breakthrough, form the right group of people, and start the company and get a customer and create jobs.
Yep.
I mean, that's really what we're about. And that 60 students that we're working towards, we're going to be saying to them, if you're thinking about studying engineering, study engineering. But understand how, when you're there working on some robotic arm, how do you think about taking that and making that into a product that customers want to buy?
Yeah.
I mean, in universities everywhere, and we are a great example of that, we have hundreds, probably more like thousands, of ideas sitting on the shelf in what we call the tech transfer office. And we've come up with a brilliant idea, but nobody wants to pick that up, turn it into a business that, 1, creates jobs, which is so critical, but 2, has a customer. We don't need, we probably have enough of that across all the universities that we could create a few million jobs if somebody would pick it up.
Yeah, that's what I get excited about. I know you've had plenty of conversations with Todd Johnson as well, who just gets jazzed by even knowing these conversations are happening. But I mean, you're talking about the leadership role you play in one school, and even the 60 kids in that local high school. It's like if that became over 10 years, that's 600 kids that you're impacting. Yep. Let's say even up 100 of those are viable businesses, maybe not 600, but 100 viable businesses. The number of jobs that creates, I mean, you think of other educators like yourself, or you mentioned the local bank who's kind of getting behind this. I mean, the banks across the country, across the world, there's so much impact that we can have in our communities. And again, if one of the biggest issues, even when we do our world poll, is people don't feel like they have a sense of purpose and mission, and it's oftentimes because they don't have a job, they don't have a career where they can apply their strengths and their talents. And so it really does, when you talk about solving, one of the world's biggest problems, man, you are right on the pulse of that. And again, I commend you for being a front runner in it, and I'm excited about others that will follow in your footsteps.
Yeah.
So,
well, thanks. We've got the largest 1 million cups right now here in Fargo. We're pretty proud of that. We have 200 to 250 entrepreneurs that show up every Wednesday to have coffee together. If you're out there, you've never heard of 1 million cups. It was actually started in Kansas City at the Kauffman Foundation, something to look into. Because what the belief is if we bring these people together to talk about their ideas, we can start more companies, and we have to think about this locally. It's going to happen in the cities where those things are going to be created. We can't wait around for the federal government to tell us what to do. We've got to get with this, and we've really embraced that. And I'm so impressed with the group that put together 1 million cups here. That's one of the next things that I'm going to do, is I'm actually going to eventually give a presentation there to them about ESF. So we're trying to hit it from all different angles. Thanks for the nice compliment to me. I appreciate it very much. I'm just out here trying to do my part. So.
Hey, one more question for you, and then Jim, I'll turn it over to you if we got questions from the chat room. One thing we always try to share on these calls is coaches are always asking about, you've been doing this for a while, Tim, what tips and tricks do you have? You had shared with me, and again, just kind of in conversation we were having about, the impact and when the opportunities you have to be able to share advice. I know recently you won a teaching award, which again, in some ways you could care less about the award, but it gave you the platform, and it's a huge honor, right? And congratulations to you on it. But it's a huge honor that what it gave you was the platform to say, Tim, these teachers in the audience, you share with them what you want to share with them, right? You won the award. Right. We're going to bring you up front. What is it? Give us just your quick nugget of what is it that you shared. So when you think about coaching, you think about impact. What did you share with those teachers when you had the opportunity to just talk to them?
Okay, I'm going to try to hold this up.
It's upside down.
Up.
What I do best. Yep.
Yep. This is a great new product, and only $4. It's just wonderful. It's that you don't have to know your strengths to be able to sort through these cards, and basically you are picking out what you're really good at.
Yep.
So I've got a form. I actually have 4 of these forms, and I will tell you that I would make them available to you guys if you wanted to make them available to coaches out there. I'd love to hear somebody say, "Oh, I used what you created." One of them says in the right-hand column, "What do you have to do to get paid around here?" One says, "What do you have to do to be successful academically?" The ones that I used with the teacher, it said, "What do you have to do to be successful as a teacher?" And then I have one that says, "What do you have to do to have a successful spiritual life?" So I've created 4 of them because I've done this with all of them. So that's in the right-hand column, and you only get to write down 5 things. So you can write down 5 things that you lead to success. In the left-hand column, you sort these cards, and there's directions in the cards, but once you know the directions, you can vary from there. You sort the cards, and eventually you get down to either 5 or 10 things that you say you do best, and you put that in the left-hand column. And then I ask people to say, if this is what I do best, how can you use that for these things that you have to do in the right-hand column? And in some cases, something you do best aligns with 3 or 4 of these things that are in the right-hand column. Sometimes you have something you do best that you can't align with anything. And then I ask them, if that's what you do best, what's the talent that underlies it? And they can then tell you what the talent is, even if they've never taken it. Anyway, I got this privilege. It really was a privilege because I get to talk to other professors then on anything I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So I bought a bunch of these cards. I took them. I had them do the form on the right-hand side, and then I let them sort the cards and put it down. And then we started to talk about what their natural talents were. before I knew it, I had everyone saying, "Can I have a deck of the cards?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually bought enough to give them all a deck of the cards. I've already had a friend contact me and say, "This is the best that ever happened to me."
Mm.
And he has now resorted them a couple times. And he said, "I keep getting the same 3 to 5. I said, "Yeah, well, I'm not surprised." Yeah, you get a few others. Those are probably, in my mind, just like when we look at our 34,
Yep.
the ones that are below the 5 line, but we know these are just as strong as this. Yeah, that's what you're getting. And then there's some that are down near the bottom that occasionally pop up. Those are probably situationally based. We can do that stuff. It's just that we don't think about it very often.
Yep.
It was a great, I mean, how special that was. And I got to share something that Gallup has produced. And
yeah.
I love these cards.
Well, and we'd love to see too. I know, Jim, we try to do that quite a bit, where those best practice documents, Tim. It's always fun people to share, hear from other coaches, even for Gallup. It's like, we've given you, our best, but when you guys actually are practicing it, I mean, we have coaches that are using our tools all the time as well. I personally use a lot of them with executives that I coach, but just the collaboration that we have on that'd be great to see that document. We could post that, Jim, on our blog site so people can access it and kind of see what Tim's talking about.
For sure. And I'll just remind folks, really easy to find those. Just go to shop.gallup.com and search for What I Do Best cards. You'll find them in our store, and they're $4, like Tim said, and you can pick those up.
Cool. Jim, what questions do you have? Yeah.
Yeah, and let me mention, you mentioned you're having your kids take the ESF. We have a group, our second-year group of high school interns that are here at Gallup for the fall and the spring, and we've also had them take the ESF. And as a manager, it's been great for me. It gives me some more data points for these kids, as we don't know them very well when they start, and so I put that in a spreadsheet with their name and then their top 5 and then the 10 themes, the entrepreneurial themes, kind of right next to each other, and that has really given me some insight. And I've been surprised. Some of the kids I thought, well, they probably won't be strong, or they will. You make those judgments, and then you see the results, and I was totally wrong, right? I was like, oh man, no. And we're starting to see some of that come out in them. I also had an interesting story where one of the gals, are big on encouraging women in IT here at Gallup, and we're doing a lot of things to encourage that. And one of the couple gals that we have in our group scored the best out of everybody. She had the highest, she got the letter, those kinds of things. And I said to her the other day, I said, hey, great work on the Entrepreneur Strengths Finder. You have very high talent in these areas. And she got this smile, like maybe that was the first time in a while she had been encouraged about that, about business, about whatever. And she just had this, and from that moment on, for the rest of the day, she kind of walked a little differently, kind of a little more confident, a little more, just a little more gusto in what she did. So it was kind of fun to be able to encourage the kids with those results, and we're just starting to work through them. The one question we did pull out of the chat that relates to this, and we'll have to kind of cover it fairly quickly here, though, because it's a huge topic, is this combining strengths and ESF results. And we're just starting that process here at Gallup, right? Really, Jeremy, where we're just really, there's no definitive work out there on this point. But Tim, have you looked at the two in combination together, and have you found some things that's working for you along those two? I know it's super early.
It is early, but I think there is some clear ways to think about this. The Gallup's strengths tells us about what we can do best and what we should maximize in our lives and how we should develop that. ESF is specifically focused on a specific type of career that you might choose to enter, in this case, being an entrepreneur. And so they really are not in conflict. In fact, I have made all of the people that take ESF also have taken strengths. And what we start looking at is, okay, if you're dominant in this area in ESF, Entrepreneurial Strengths Finder, what are the underlying natural talents that you have that lead to that? Mm-hmm. People can make those connections. They start to see it. I always joke about it because it's a good educational point. I have no relationship building talents in my top 5. And I make it as a joke because I often will say, well, let's just eliminate that category. And of course, everybody laughs, but that's what I want them to do. But it's not in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I'm not surprised that delegator's at the bottom. Delegator means that I would want to go out and do those kinds of things, and that's not what I tend to do first.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean that I can't build relationships? I wouldn't be on this if I couldn't, because you and I, Jeremy, would never have connected. I would have never gotten the technology to work because Jim and I would have refused to do anything. No, I can do that. It's just not what comes most natural to me. Yeah. And so I'm not surprised where delegator is. So I put people around me. I actually have people that walk in every day and say, what can I do for you? And they work around me. They ask me because they know I won't ask. And then I'll go, oh, yeah, you're really good at this. Could you do this for me? And usually what they say is, we'd love to do that for you. But I don't think to ask. I think the way to think about it always is ESF is focused on a specific profession, and strengths is based on your natural talents that you can use everywhere. I hope that helps.
Well, and you said this too, Tim and Jim. You'll recall from when Sangeeta Bottle was on the call with us. But again, that can versus how. So again, can you start a company? Right? Can you even, in some cases, there's validation for people that they're more intrapreneurial, meaning, if I work for Procter & Gamble, I have to act like a CEO if I'm going to run one of their businesses, right? So it may not mean that I'm going to go start my own, but I'm going to be an intrapreneur within a large organization. But it answers the question, ESF answers that question, can you do this? Is there a strong likelihood that you'd be successful as an entrepreneur, partnering with others who complement your entrepreneurial talents? And then again, Strength Finder is how you do it. Mm-hmm. So even when you think about determination for you, Tim, you mentioned, activator, command, focus, that makes you determined. For me, it might be my maximizer belief.
Right. And what comes out may look very different, and yet we both can do it.
Exactly.
How we do it looks different.
Yep.
Yeah, no shock for me when Promoter came out number 2, as my woo and communication are very, very strong, right? And if you've been around the Call to Coach community, Theme Thursday, that's what I do, right? I'm just a promoter, and it just makes sense. I was a little surprised determination all the way at number 1. That was one that, for me, very, very strong. And so it was, for me, we're still working through this journey, which is really cool. It's fun to have a new set of data on myself to kind of start evaluating things through and have another framework, right? This is that framework from which to see yourself and to have discussions with other people. And so it's really fun. For me, it's been great to have it with our high schoolers. We're going to work with some college students here in the area as well. They're going to take it, and we're going to follow them as well. And so just a lot of fun to have access to that tool and be able to work with people with it.
Jim, would you be surprised that Creative Thinker came out as my number 1?
Really?
Really?
So maybe a little surprised. I don't know you very well, Tim, so I couldn't say yes or no to that. But well, I think there's some interesting. Again, the days are early on this, and we've got a lot of stuff behind this. But digging in, I guess I do want to warn a lot of people of taking it and then trying to jam it into the strengths model, right? Because they are very separate things, right? Mm-hmm. They're steered in very different directions. So if you're listening to this, and if you're a coach, Jeremy, there was a question about for this. I know, Tim, you took our first course. Do we have other courses lined up? I couldn't find any on the site, but maybe some are coming.
We do, yeah. There's a course that's being scheduled right now. It should be on the website in December, and we can update the blog on that too, Jim. But yeah, the coaching.gallup.com website has all of our Gallup courses, coaching courses available. I mentioned our high performance management course, which is one of our management courses. You can find that out there as well. But this one, the Entrepreneurial Strength Finder coach course. Again, there's some people who have already been certified as coaches, like Dr. Peterson mentioned that he had, that this is a nice add-on if you're going to be working with entrepreneurs or want to get familiar with this tool. And there's others that are just, passionate about entrepreneurship, what's happening in their city or their counties where they live, and maybe haven't been through any other coaching courses, but this is a great way to just kind of get your head around this tool.
Yeah, and actually the best place for that is at the Gallup Strength Center. So GallupStrengthsCenter.com has a list of all our training and all the options that are available, as well as all the resources that are available. We've come to the end of our time here, and I have a couple reminders. So first of all, Dr. Peterson, Tim, we want to thank you for taking the time to be. It's been great to get to know you. I had intended to meet you last week when you were here in town, and I just never got to the training. I think I came in and spoke. No, maybe I didn't get into that class, but I was hoping to meet you then, but it's been great to hang out with you this week. Jeremy, before I wrap this up, you want to highlight a couple things that we have coming up?
Yeah, I do. Our next call, again, we do these call to coach calls twice a month. November 7th will be our next call. We've got two guests with us, Lisa Anslinger and Stephanie Moore. Both of them have been longtime fans of the Clifton Strength Finder, have used it in and through their communities. They've been part of a couple different nonprofits, specifically that have been helping bring strengths into the Catholic Church community, and that's had a lot of impact both in the nonprofit space and faith-based organizations. So we're excited to hear from them of just the impact of how strengths has been really an integral part of them helping people make a difference in their communities where they live and communities of faith. So it'll be fun to hear from them on the 7th. And Jim, I know we've got Theme Thursday. Our next Theme Thursday is coming up as well. Remind me, the theme was?
The theme is communication.
Communication.
Yay.
So.
Yay for me.
Closing.
Another theme about me.
Yeah. That one, we've blocked 90 minutes for that call, right? Whoever we're interviewing.
You better believe it.
Hey, Tim, I want to make sure before we jump off, and this doesn't have to be long, but one thing that you did, again, this kind of probably fits into that tips and tricks piece for people, but we always talk about catching people doing what they're doing right. Even Jim, you made the comment of validating for that intern, just seeing her talent, what that means, that she has the strength of an entrepreneur. Don Clifton talked about this all the time. How do we fill people's buckets? Is it more of a dipper, right, or is it a drop in somebody's bucket? I know a practice that you've done for years, I believe, Tim, is that you, I think, even carry with you in your pocket, right, a little inspiration, and when you meet that person that you feel like that lines up with, you give that to them. I know that's something you shared one of those with me after the week we spent together. I've got it in my office. But share, I'd just love for you to just share that, because I think there's ways that we can all, every one of us, modify this to just catching people doing what they do right around us.
I actually carry little cards that have a little quote in it, and the cards come in lots of different types. We'll just talk about one that says hero on it, and it has a quote. I sign the back of the card and date it, and I carry these around looking for the person that it was meant for. And then I give it to them, and I tell them, this probably isn't going to get you anything. You can't buy a cup of coffee or anything with this. But this was meant for you, and I've been looking for you. I started, before I found these little cards I could buy, I actually would put great quotes that I love on a card, and I would sign them. So you don't have to spend much money. You could go to Office Depot, buy business cards that you can just print on your printer and stick a quote on there that you love and give it to somebody and say, this is important. You could do this with strengths. You could carry around the communications card. Jim, I owe you a communications card. You could carry that around with you for a week looking for a person that's exhibiting communications and give it to them with the short definition of what that means and say, this is when you're at the best.
Yeah.
And what it does for that person, I mean, you're putting a drop in their bucket. There is no doubt about that.
Well, like I said, Tim, I mean, I live and breathe this stuff and do this as my profession, but it was a year ago that you gave me that little card, and I've got it in my office. So it's, again, I think it's a good reminder to all of us to just catch people doing what they do best.
Absolutely.
And whether you're using tools like ESF or CSF to validate that, or just your own intuition, catch people doing what they do best and inspire them. So, Dr. Peterson, thank you. It's been great.
You are so welcome. I loved every minute of this.
Good. Well, we've enjoyed having you, and I'll remind individuals again. We've talked about the Gallup Strength Center, GallupStrengthCenter.com. Email us at coaching@gallup.com. Of course, a lot of our information's out on the blog site. That's just coaching.gallup.com. A couple really cool announcements coming up. Brand new website coming out this weekend at gallup.com. So if you want to see our brand new site, sometime on Saturday or Sunday, if you're listening to this or whatever, if it's past the weekend, just go out there, gallup.com. Brand new website coming out. We have 2 new mobile apps for you, iOS and Android. I alluded to those earlier. Just go out to the store and search for StrengthsFinder. You can get that app, download it, it's free. Log in with your email account that you took StrengthsFinder with, and your strengths are there. If you can't remember them, a lot of people can't. Most people only remember 4 out of 5, and so if you can't remember them all, get those apps downloaded and get that out. We built that just for you, so you make sure you get out there and get that done. And then I want to remind you we have brand new subscription links to this program as well. So Theme Thursday, Call to Coach, and The Great Manager, all in a single feed now. And if you want to download that to your Android or iPhone device, you can use Podcatcher or whatever you use to listen to podcasts. You can get those and get them downloaded to your device to listen to in the car. So we're super excited about that. We just opened that yesterday, and it went like gangbusters. And so I'm going to post the link to that right now. If you're hanging out still listening live, that's going to go into the chat, so you can go out there. We'll make that available on the website as well. And if you have any questions, of course, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. We're out of time. Thanks for coming out and listening. And until next time, goodbye, everyone.